Good afternoon, punks and lovelies. Thanks for joining me. This is Jessie. I know I said that I was not going to do more than one video per book while I'm going through the Malazan series, and that might have been fine for Gardens of the Moon, but as I'm reading Deadhouse Gates, there's some conversation pieces that I don't want to miss out on, and I feel like if I get to the end of the book that I'm going to forget some of these things that I want to talk about. Also, with Gardens of the Moon, I think that I was just so focused on getting used to the story and Erikson's writing and getting through it that I missed a lot of the potentially deeper meanings in the book. And I probably won't realize that until I do a reread, if I ever can do a reread of this massive series. So here we are. This is about a third of the way through. Deadhouse Gates is where I'm at. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was compassion. Now, I know a lot of people have mentioned how compassion is a huge part of these books, the series in general. And like I said, I guess that's something that I just overlooked or missed out on in Gardens of the Moon. But with Deadhouse Gates, there is a scene in particular that really floored me. And I was like, that is what they're talking about when everybody's talking about compassion. And so it's a little less than 100 pages in. It is Felison coming home, and Heborik, the priest Heborik, is commenting on how she is relying on Bennett for a lot of stuff. And Felison is aware of this. Felison is sleeping with Bennett to get I guess favors that aren't afforded to other slaves who are there. And she passes those favors along to the priest Heborik and Bowden. If you remember from one of my earlier videos, Bowden was the one who sawed off somebody's head while they were all chained together at the beginning. I'm going to read this because I think this is one of those things that is really going to draw people in. If you've made it to book 2 and you haven't quit yet, this is one of those important moments. And like I said, it's a conversation between Heborik and Felison. You're being moved, Heborik, to deep soil, starting tomorrow. No more Gun-Up and his switch. He closed his eyes. Why does thinking you leave such a bitter taste in my mouth? My wine-soaked brain whispers hypocrisy. She watched the color leave his face. Oh, Felison, too much Durhang, too much wine. Do I only do good for Heborik to give me salt for his wounds? I've no wish to be so cruel. She withdrew from beneath her tunic the food she had saved for him, leaned forward, and placed the small wrapped bundle in his lap. Sinker Lake has dropped another hand's width. He said nothing, eyes on the stumps at the end of his wrists. Felison frowned. There was something else she wanted to tell him, but her memory failed her. She finished the wine and straightened, running both hands back through her hair. Her scalp felt numb. She paused, seeing Heborik surreptitiously glance at her breasts, round and full under the stretched tunic. She held the pose for a moment longer than necessary, then slowly lowered her arms. Bula has fantasies of you, she said slowly. It's the possibilities that intrigue her. It would do you some good, Heborik. He spun away off the stool, the untouched food bundle falling to the floor. Hood's breath, girl. She laughed, watching him sweep aside the hanging that separated his cot from the rest of the room, then clumsily yank it back behind him. After a moment, her laughter fell away, and she listened to the old man climb onto his cot. I'd hoped to make you smile, Heborik, she wanted to explain, and I didn't want my laughter to sound so hard. I'm not what you think I am. Am I? She puts the food away and lays down, and then Bowden comes in, and she hears Bowden go to Heborik's room, and she hears them talking, and then Bowden kind of half laughs and goes to bed. She feels excluded, and then the two were planning something. It was not that this shook her. It was not this that shook her. It was that she was being excluded. A flash of anger followed this realization. I've kept them alive. I've made their lives easier. Since the transport ship. Bula's right. Every man's a bastard good enough only to be used. Very well. See for yourselves what skullcap is for everyone else. I'm done with favors. I'll see you back on the carts, old man. I swear it. She found herself fighting tears and knew she would do nothing of the sort. She needed Benneth, and that was true enough. She'd pay to keep him. But she needed Heborik and Bowden as well, and a part of her clung to them as a child to parents, denying the hardness that everywhere else filled her world. To lose that, to lose them, would be to lose everything. So here we see how broken Felison is. And a lot of people have touched on how spoiled she was in her past life, and that seems to have come with her into this new terrible, horrible, just brutal world that she's been thrown into since the culling. I don't see that. I see this really broken girl who is still a child. She is broken. She is clinging to these two men as the last semblance of any kind of family, friends, anything that she can hold on to in this horrible world where she's using Durhang as a crutch. Durhang is, I imagine, tantamount to weed. And that's all she does is she sleeps with Benneth and who he tells her to sleep with, and she smokes Durhang and she drinks wine, and this is to bury the horrors that are now her daily life. This, like I said, this very nearly had me in tears. In addition to this, this book gave me some ideas for some future videos. I've noticed the horses, and I know that's a really strange thing to say, but I have. There's a scene where Fiddler's riding towards the city accompanying Absalar and Crocus, who are posing as newlyweds. And when they approach the city, there's some guards and there's a camp, and they tell them that the city's closed. And one of the guards spits at Crocus. No, he doesn't spit at Crocus. He spits in the direction of Crocus's horse. And then it says, it would later be said that even a Graal's horse knew an insult when it saw one. Before Fiddler could react, his mount's head snapped forward, stripping the reins from the sapper's hands, and bit the guardsman in the face. They're not certain whether the guardsman is going to live or not. Like, it was that bad of a situation. Shortly after this, Fiddler races the Eriks to their camp, and Erikson writes personality into this horse, let me tell you. So as they're racing, despite the horror that Fiddler has just witnessed with his horse biting somebody's face off, he is aware that the horse is really into the race. It's as if he is... it's as if he was born for this game, born for racing. And Erikson does a really good job of writing the personality of the horse into the story. There's another part earlier in the book where Kalam is writing, and it says, as much as he detested horses in principle, the animal was magnificent when in full stride, seeming to flow effortlessly over the ground with the rhythm forgiving of Kalam's modest skills. He would come no closer to admitting a growing affection towards the stallion. So these really touched me. So there's some things in books that I will notice that really push the books to the next level for me. And they might sound minimal or silly or trite, but to me, they can be everything. So horses, the naming of weapons, trees, and not just trees as characters like the aunts, but like trees as symbols, trees as background, trees as physical locations that are important to the story. And so I'm thinking about doing some videos maybe a little bit further down the line. So on the horses vein, we have like Gandalf's Shadow Facts. We have Artax in the Neverending Story. We have these horses here in Deadhouse Gates. There's with trees, it's a little bit, stranger, it's harder to explain, and I'd have to really break down what it is that I'm trying to get at with that. But with the swords, like the naming of the swords, you have Stinger in the Lord of the Rings, and even in this series, you have Chance, that was Opon's tool in, I guess, using as puppet strings for Paran to use in his in his in his will and what he wanted to happen. Um, with the trees, I grew up in Maine, and so I grew up around white bark birches and innumerable evergreens. Not just pines, but like eastern white pines. Not just spruces, but blue spruces and maple trees, and so trees are a huge and significant part of my life. Even in Texas, where most of the trees are stunted and they look like overgrown brush, I would notice the trees that were older, they were bigger. Even the dead trees that were missing leaves and flowers, they were beautiful to me. I love trees, and so like in Gardens of the Moon, we have that seed that's taken when they release the Jagged Tyrant, and then this seed is planted and it goes crazy. Like you can see it growing, the branches spreading out, and then it eventually makes a kind of house. And that was so fascinating to me. And so these are things that I would like to do a deep dive into with regards to fantasy lit, because I think that these are the things, the little things that the authors put in there and incorporate into the story that just really give it an additional like punch and make it that much more interesting. You're gonna have to forgive my background. I haven't touched on this yet, or maybe I have. So we're planning on moving. This isn't my house. This is my father-in-law's house. Our house that we're renting right now is not big enough for me to have a home office, and so after we were put on lockdown over a year ago, I just kind of moved everything over to my father-in-law's house as far as like my office is concerned. I have been told that I am going to be going to work from home permanently, full time, all the time, which is fantastic and phenomenal news. So when I move in about 1 or 2 months from now, you'll see a setting change, and hopefully a much better background. Really quick, I want to get these deals to you before they're gone. We have some really good ones today. We have The Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. It's $2.99 today. Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan is $1.99. Heart Shaped Box by Joe Hill is $3.99. Wonderful book. I loved it. Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler is $2.99. That's really wonderful. And I just got news that Preston and Child are going to be dropping another Agent Pendergast novel, Bloodless. And yes, I did pre-order it, and I get all the goodies with pre-ordering it. And so when I get those goodies in, I will share that with you. And there is one more book that is on sale today that I wanted to share with you, and it seems like an Indian fantasy, Eastern Indian fantasy. It is called Hunted by the Sky. It is the first book in the Wrath of Ambar series by Tanaz Bhaathena. And this is the synopsis from Amazon. Gull has spent her life running. She has a star-shaped birthmark on her arm, and in the kingdom of Ambar, girls with such birthmarks have been disappearing for years. Gull's mark is what caused her parents' murder at the hand of King Lohar's ruthless soldiers and forced her into hiding to protect her own life. So when a group of rebel women called the Sisters of the Golden Lotus rescue her, take her in, and train her in warrior magic, Gull wants only one thing: revenge. Cavus lives in the tenements, and he's just about ready to sign his life over to the king's army. His father is terminally ill, and Cavus will do anything to save him. But sparks fly when he meets a mysterious girl, Gull, in the capital's bazaar. And as the chemistry between them undeniably grows, he becomes entangled in a mission of vengeance and discovers a magic he never expected to find. I know this sounds Aladdin-ish, but it sounds really fascinating to me. Dangerous circumstances have brought Gull and Cavus together at the King's Domain in Ambar Fort, a world with secrets deadlier than their own. And again, that's on sale for $2.99 today, so check it out. I will have another video later on in the week with some more book deals, and as you can see, there's more books on the bed than there were in the last video. That's because I did go back to that library sale in Marion and spent another ridiculous amount on books, so that's fun. I also ordered a knife, or a sword, that's a replica of one of those swords from Lord of the Rings. John and I collect knives. I don't know that you can be as much into fantasy as I am, or as much into Magic the Gathering as we are, and not have an affinity for pointy objects. I mean, we have a whole collection that we buy from like Smoky Mountain Knife Works and Bud K. Sometimes we'll find stuff at flea markets, Amazon maybe sometimes, but those Bud K and Smoky Mountain Knife Works are the main ones that we buy from. And so I'm really excited to get this sword in, and I have a feeling that it's going to be a very expensive collection once I get that started. We do have other swords. We have katana swords. We have Bowie knives. We have those stilettos. We have a lot of stuff. But this is a new one for me, and I've kind of held off on it because it is expensive. Like I noticed, like the more expensive ones are like more like $200, $300, $400 and up. But the one that I got, it was kind of one of the cheaper ones. I just wanted to check it out and see what I think about it, how I feel about investing in this going forward. I hope you've enjoyed this. Like and subscribe if any of the videos that I'm going to do later sound interesting to you. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day, punks and lovelies.